All right, how's it going, everybody? CVH here, and today we're going to be narrating round 5 in our IDC33 tournament run. It's been a couple weeks since this match. Actually, I've neglected to record a couple of the things I needed to record for this tournament, these narrations. So this is the last one I have to do, I think. I think I was just too busy with work in the moment to do live commentary for this one. But I've actually already started playing IDC34. That's how long I waited for this. But anyway, back to the match at hand. This is round 5, like I said, and this is up against Drapty, who I had never played before in any of the IDC tournaments that I have entered. I had no idea what Drapty might be playing. As mentioned a few previous times, if you haven't seen the 4 preceding matches, we are on Light Water, Dark Nature, Ice Sword. You can see the full list in the first round of the tournament. And it's been going pretty well. 3-1 so far. Still needing 2 wins to lock top 8. And a 4-2 performance could potentially make top 8. So we've got this match on 1.5 times speed. We're just going to go through it, analyze what happens, see if there's any fun learnings, any mistakes we've made. A few of these we've gone back and narrated. I noticed some moderate misplays. One of them in particular sticks out in my head still weeks after playing, and even weeks after narrating that match is pretty egregious. So hopefully we don't see anything quite of that sort in today's match. And so far, Drapty is just on mono blue. Surfer, Hulkus, Emerald don't really tell me a ton. I mean, this could be quite a few different decks still, including Water, Fire, Nature, Aggro. I think I checked the deck count earlier, and it was a 40-card deck. So that's what we're working with currently. Emerald setting a shield isn't too big of a deal for the Ice Sword deck. We're not tending to be too aggressive early on. We're not just going after shields. I think one of the misplays that I'm talking about from an earlier match involved going in way too early, but I should know better than that now. This is now round 5 of the tournament. I've been getting more familiar with the deck, which I hadn't really tested too much prior to the event. But here we go. Bronze Arm Tribe on curve. Right as planned. Sky Sword goes down in mana, so I'm hoping my opponent doesn't aggro me too hard, but it hasn't been too much of a threatening board so far. And with this turn, we can see exactly what Drapty's playing. It's Light Water, Ailzonius. Felix sort of gives it away, and Sirion is an absolute dead giveaway. It's the only deck that Sirion has played in. So Ailzonius is a little tricky, really hard to deal with for this deck. Nothing can target it, so you either have to have something with Slayer or Bazagazil or Fighter Dualfang. Fortunately, we do have 2 Fighter Dualfangs in this version of the deck. It tends to only run 1. I guess Blue Mercus as well, we just drew that, is larger. But aside from the 3 creatures that are straight up bigger than Ailzonius, it just kind of doesn't get answered. And you have to hope that you can outpace it with a wider board than they have. You know, Ailzonius does evolve on something, so it's not going to be a super wide board usually, but Drapty's done a really good job this game of just curving out, filling the board with a bunch of things that, even by themselves without any evolutions on board, are kind of hard to answer for Ice Sword. Ice Sword has a lot of weak creatures, Bloom, which I just played, being one of the main exceptions to that, but Sirion and Magris, even by themselves, are pretty hard to deal with for us. Without Miraculous Plague, that is. There's 2 of that card in the deck, and 1 is already in mana. Two Surfers in hand is pretty interesting. A lot of Aqua Surfers seen this game, not necessarily where I'd want to see them. Much better in the shields for sure. And this is actually a really just impressive curve from Drapty. Emerald into Sirion into Magris into Ailzonius, and then we see the tap we see the pass because obviously if Ailzonius is tapped, Blue Mercus can just attack over it. So Bloom was an amazing draw in this match for sure. I remember being very worried about bounce. Blue Mercus is susceptible to bounce for sure. So if my opponent has his own Surfer, maybe a Unicorn Fish or a Spiral Gate even, that could be a problem. So I go with the Loco. And yeah, Petrova actually too was the discard, which is kind of interesting. So Drapty obviously played Ailzonius and didn't attack and waited until Petrova would come online next turn to be larger than Bloom. I feel like there's some definite merit to doing that in the other order. I feel like getting Petrova on board is just going to be universally good for the rest of the game for a variety of reasons. Maybe you just follow up with Ailzonius when you're going to attack, because I feel like playing Ailzonius and passing, yeah, it plays around discard, but it also definitely telegraphed to me that he probably had a way to bypass Bloom the following turn, or he would have done something else with that many cards in hand. So I was very eager to play that Locomotive. I feel like maybe starting with Petrova and then Ailzonius next turn was maybe the right order there, but I'm curious if anyone else in the comments has thoughts. Regardless, I think I would be playing the Locomotive there either way. So maybe if I hadn't discarded the Petrova, I would be discarding Ailzonius, and then maybe I would be in a better situation. So maybe it all kind of worked out. Things are turning sideways. Ailzonius is going in. Soul Swap was played as a trigger. You get Sky Sword. Very nice, one of the deck's main defensive lines. But I am taking some serious hits. And I remember like feeling kind of okay with the situation, but then I like draw for turn and I realize I'm basically just dead on board because Magris is humongous. For some reason, nothing on my board trades into it. And I can Sky Sword yet again. But that's pretty much it. I can Sky Sword for one more shield. I can surf for something that unfortunately can't be Ailzonius because it can't be targeted. And not only am I relying on another shield trigger in that case, but even if I survive, I'm still without a way of dealing with Ailzonius the following turn. I think I spent a couple minutes here just going through the cards again and seeing if there's any out that I'm missing. But it really does feel just like Sky Sword and Hulkus are going to be played, so I might as well play the Hulkus first in that case. I guess there's the super optimistic line of like, if I want to win the game, maybe it has to just be Holy Awe. You know, so maybe instead of playing Sky Sword, I play the Bloom and just have an answer for Ailzonius the following turn. So like I'm dead much more often, but in the case that I do have Holy Awe down, I'll have a much better chance of actually winning the game from there in the following turns. But that I don't think is right, especially in this version of the deck, because there's only one Holy Awe in the version I'm playing. It would be very cool to have Emerald and Holy Awe in hand right now. Then I could just Emerald, Holy Awe down, play Bloom, trade over Emerald, and yeah, use the following turn to hopefully play Sky Swords and other stuff. But here we go. It's the Hulkus Sky Sword play. Sky Sword attacks over the Emerald as planned, and I'm still dead on board. The saving grace of the situation is that because I have 3 shields and Drapty only has 2 cards to attack with besides Ailzonius, Ailzonius won't be able to be hexproof, so he can't like break all my shields, and then Ailzonius would be able to be hexproof, and there's no trigger that could stop it. I do decide to break because I feel like if I can't deal with Ailzonius next turn, I have to present a 2-turn. So I try to attack, hope that he goes in and gets stopped by a shield trigger, and then hope that I can use my board to finish him off next turn. We'll see if that pays off. And of course, if I had hit Aqua Surfer there in shields, that'd be pretty unlucky because I think there's only one left in Drapty's deck. But then the 3 could break, and then if the last shield was a shield trigger, Ailzonius would be impervious to anything that's not Holy Awe. But as it stands, Drapty has lethal, but barely. So there's definite chances here to stay alive. Drapty's top decking into Hulkus, into something with 3 mana left. The only thing that could really change the situation here, I think if Drapty had maybe a Belix or something defensive, then at that point you just trade over 3 of my creatures and have a more guaranteed lethal next turn. But it doesn't look like it. I could definitely be convinced if I were in his shoes, just be trading over 3 things. I mean, it feels incorrect because obviously right there we just saw Drapty win. So it worked out for Drapty. He takes game 1. Dropping a lot of game 1s in this tournament. Watching back, it really, it's hitting me again. I dropped a lot of game 1s. I got to stop doing that. Stay tuned to see if that, you know, continues into round 6 or not. But yeah, I feel like if I were Drapty, you have 3 favorable trades there. Gets me down to 3 creatures on board. There's no real lethal there because he can take me off of all my beast folks. So Fighter Dual Fang isn't an out. He knows one of my cards is Bloom, which is super slow. I think he maybe just trade over 3 things, drop the Hulkus next turn, have a that much more guaranteed of a lethal. It's not really guaranteed in either case, but it's more likely. I think if I were in his shoes, I might have done that. Just because of how difficult it would be for me to answer anything on board. Well, maybe not. Because I would still have, I think, something to trade with the 2K. Maybe not. I'd have to go back and look. Anyway, I think attacking was fine. I don't think he was at much risk there. Sometimes you just have to go for it. It also depends on what Drapty's last card was too. If he didn't have more creatures to develop, I could see that being a thing. So we're in game 2. I'm on the play. I don't play the Quixotic. I'm not going to get super aggressive this game. It can sometimes be good to trade over things, but it can also be something that preserves the other cards in my hand, basically, if I need to play just something silly in mana that wouldn't otherwise be too impactful. Quixotic's not necessarily always going to be a valuable card if my opponent's not getting super aggressive. This was a tough turn, because now I think, okay, maybe I do play the Quixotic, and next turn I can Colon down the Belix. This gives Colon some viability, or sorry, this gives the Quixotic some viability with Colon, because my opponent's already played Evo Bait, so it's potentially worth. The downside is it just kind of makes me spend a lot of cards that aren't really doing a whole lot on board after that to get rid of one Evo Bait, and there's a lot more Evo Bait in Drapty's deck. So this was tough. Looking back on this, I'm not necessarily sure I made the right call, because the alternative is to put Quixotic and Colon and mana over the following 2 turns and have multiple Sky Swords, which I still kind of have because I have 1 in hand and I already have a Soul Swap in hand. So I can multiple Sky Sword this game, but I feel like every shield kind of matters when you're trying to race an Ailzonius. But in that same vein, getting rid of my opponent's Belix with the Colon and Quixotic combo here would mean a potential Ailzonius has to only evolve on Sirion, which is better for me. It's 1 less attacker on board. If Ailzonius had evolved onto Belix, there'd be 2 attackers. So this does have some value. We're thinning the herd a little bit, and that could benefit me in a race situation as well. And this game hasn't started horribly or anything. It wasn't a super aggressive start from Drapty. I'm worried here about just like a pass and then a favorable over Quixotic, which is kind of sad for me. Looks like he is going for either a Sirion number 2 or an Aqua Hulkus. Or maybe he decided not to. A lot of thinky turns. Am I on 1.5? I just want to double check that I am. Here we are on 1.5. We're not going to go up to 2 times speed. That's a little much. Yeah, so he basically decides to blank on a turn and simply attack over the Quixotic with a favorable, nice, clean attack. Sky Sword comes down, which is great. Puts Plague into mana, which is not great. Definitely a less than great outcome there. I could definitely see a world where Hulkus and like one other thing come down, and then I get a pretty sick Plague on a couple things not named Warlord Ailzonius, and I get to start attacking. Sirion and mana for Drapty, and yeah, that's really interesting. What could Drapty's hand be? Is it just all multis and Ailzoniuses or Petrovas? That's something, isn't it? I wonder, because I probably just would have jammed the second Sirion if I were Drapty last turn. I don't know that I realized how weird that was in the moment, but looking back on it, yeah, that's a weird turn. I'm very surprised that it wasn't just Sirion on board, even if it's like a bunch of multi-civs and 5-cost creatures. I mean, if it's like Surfer and Holion, I think you just like put the Surfer in mana. You keep Holion probably, but I think in every case I would probably have just played that Sirion. Because again, like, neither of our decks answer wide boards well, and we're both kind of trying to race at a certain point, so yeah, I mean, I guess guaranteeing the Ailzonius for the following turn is good, but he had just seen a Play go down in mana, so like, this is Ailzonius. Having Ailzonius and a Sirion on board, just way better. Just way better for sure. Either way, Ailzonius comes down. Not as threatened this game at all, for a variety of reasons. First of all, I have Fighter Dualfang in case he attacks. And second of all, I have 6 shields and 3 things on board already, so I could even just start racing. I could just turn up the heat on the Ailzonius and say to him, hey, you have to use Ailzonius defensively now. And it's an amazing card aggressively against a deck like this, but defensively it is real slow. You know, it's an 8 mana investment. It took a creature to evolve on. So if I just start swinging, sometimes it is just enough to get there. And I think, if I remember correctly, that's actually what I do this turn. If I had a shield trigger in hand, shield trigger creature specifically, or like a Holy Awe, I think Ice Vapor Emerald would be pretty sick use of 7 mana. Well, actually, Fighter Dual Fang does give you mana, as it turns out. So I'd probably just stick with the Fighter Dual Fang, regardless. But here it's Emerald for sure, just to fill the board. I might just put the Foul down here to fish. I don't know if I do. It looks like I do. I'm just trying to find other slightly more high impact cards than Foul Iga here, which I think at this stage of the tournament I had started regretting including, because I didn't include the 1 Clamp or 1 Spiral Gate I was thinking of. So it hadn't been as good as I had hoped. Sky Sword is a fine pickup in case this game drags on a bit longer. And yeah, I play the Fighter Dual Fang and Emerald, and I just think, you know, I realize I could trade here and then break with the other creatures, but the Ailzonius has no way to kill me this turn. So I can be in the same situation, except 2 shields better, by just making him do the trade that I know is probably going to happen. You know, make Ailzonius run into Fighter Dual Fang for me. No reason to do the work for him if there's no real shot at him getting lethal here. He would need 3 shield trigger creatures here to represent lethal. And that's assuming that I wouldn't get any shield triggers myself. So yeah, let's just make him do the work. The old phrase, let him figure it out. And I don't think a Petrova play figures it out here. It allows a favorable trade. Ailzonius is supposed to be evolved on Sirion. There was like a weird, sometimes Octagon bugs out where you can't select the creature you're evolving on. And yeah, it's just sometimes separates every single turn, which is kind of annoying. So we do have lethal here. There's also no shield trigger. And bonus, Drapty is still not presenting lethal on board, so just in case we whiff on the lethal, we still have a pretty good shot of winning the game overall. Sky Sword makes it even more difficult for Drapty to find a lethal. Vulcus comes down, draws a card, and we are going to go for it and see what happens. And we dodge the last shield trigger and take the match to 1-1, moving on to game 3. Oh, this reminded me of I think if I were live commentating this, I would have been like, oh, not again. Because this is, for those of you who are actually following the entire run and watching these matches, and shout out to you if you are doing that. Hopefully you're enjoying the ride, but this is very similar to what happened against Patikman, where we're in game 3 against a moderately aggressive deck and just open with like a darkness flooded hand that involves multiple ice vapors. The hand against Patikman, I think, was double vapor, double loco, and a Terrapit. This is a little bit different and significantly better, because we're up against a slightly slower deck. Locomotiver is powerful against Ailzonius for sure. Ice Vapor still sucks against Ailzonius, and there were 3 of them. So that's not great. That part is not amazing. But yeah, the hand is working out. We have plays if we wanted to play something this turn. I think in this case, looking at this board, if I were me, I think I'd put Quixotic down here. But that gets a little strange too, because then the most intuitive line here is Bronze Arm into Sky Sword, and then Locomotiver is kind of left without a good turn to be played on. Because ideally I'd want to play that before Drapty's turn 5. And if I go Bronze Arm Sky Sword on my turns 3 and 4 on the draw, Drapty will have an opportunity to play Ailzonius or Petrova before I can Loco it out. So maybe it's Bronze Arm on 3 just because it's like the only thing to do right now. And then Locomotiver on 4 regardless of whether or not I get light mana for Sky Sword. It's off curve, but unless I'm trying to ramp into a 7, doesn't really make a ton of sense. Now if I draw Lost Soul, then maybe it's Sky Sword. But I didn't try light mana either way, so. The play is clear as I throw the 3rd Ice Vapor into mana. And yeah, that's the critical Locomotiver right there. Locomotiver discards Ailzonius. For all I know, there could be 2. But yeah, Locomotiver when Drapty's already played to the board a little bit. Also, Locomotiver is a card I run. He knows that. So playing the 2nd Belix could maybe be considered an inaccuracy. It does make the Locomotiver more accurate. With fewer cards in hand, it's more likely I discard Ailzonius. But I understand wanting 2 Belix on board before Ailzonius. It seems excessive, but I already have Bronze Arm on board, so he's probably trying to play around Fighter Dual Fang. If he attacks with Ailzonius and it's his only attacker, and I drop Fighter Dual Fang, he'll want the Belix to chump block and let Ailzonius break 2 more shields. And he did admittedly get unlucky there that I locomotivered the Ailzonius out the first time. So now I just Sky Sword. I think it's the most efficient use of the turn. Yeah, there's a chance he has a second Ailzonius, but it's a little bit unlikely. Wait. He played Petrova in mana to Holy Ami? Did that happen? I think it did. Yeah, he played Petrova and mana to play Holy Ami. I don't think I agree with that. I don't know if I noticed how weird that mana choice was in the game either, but I really think Petrova just, you smack it on board and it's just like, 7,000 power dudes. And he could have kept the Holy on hand. He didn't know I had a second Locomotiver. I think you keep it. Just hope I don't have another Loco, but I definitely think you play Petrova there. I don't really know what he was so scared of. Like, yeah, the Belixes only go to 7k, so if I have Fighter Dual Fang, I still have the biggest thing on board, but then I'm like, it's like one of those other matches earlier in the tournament where I shouldn't be playing Fighter Dual Fang and just swinging at shields here anyway, so that wouldn't be a thing that he would be too scared of. And it sets up for if he does draw Ailzonius number 2 eventually, it attacks over Fighter Dual Fang, it attacks over Blue Mercus, it's just impervious forever, right? Like, in this matchup, as long as you're not getting outpaced, if you have Petrova plus Ailzonius, you just can't be stopped. There's I can block, I can tap, but I can never fully recover. Like, I can never recover the board from that. I have to already be up multiple creatures and able to race it to have a chance against that combination because they're just humongous. Yeah, I don't know. I would play Petrova there, I think. But that is not the timeline we're in, thankfully. I feel like if Petrova were on board right now, I'd be having a worse time of it. But it's my turn, and I draw Aqua Sniper. Eventually, I can sniper back some blockers and do some spicy stuff, but this hand is like, it's kind of a lot of nothing. I think if I remember correctly, I might consider bouncing my own Hulkus here. Yeah. I'm glad that made sense a couple weeks later. I'm glad I'm looking at that and also thinking that I should probably do that, because in the moment it felt a little dumb, but like a necessary dumb. Because my opponent's applying no pressure, and I know if I just wait, eventually he's going to draw this card, and then things are going to get a lot more difficult for me. He draws it really quick. A really quick draw. I was hoping to have a little bit more time to, again, build a board, make it a wide one, so when Ailzonius comes down, I can simply race it, deal with the other creatures, or have like a free shot with Fighter Dual Fang or Bloom. But I had very little time. So Ailzonius is breaking me down to 3 shields. Yeah, one of the good parts of this is all right, I guess it's a Surfer Shield trigger, yeah. Yeah. Aqua Surfer just bounces the blocker. Nice. Allows me to trade with the other Surfer. If I had a Bronze Arm Tribe, I could go for Bronze Arm Fighter Dual Fang, which would be pretty sick here. Because again, Petrova's not around, so that would be nice. Not the case. But yeah, a wide board, you could just race this kind of thing, but since I only have 2 Aqua Surfers, I have to be a little bit defensive here. So Hulkus comes down, and I believe the plan here is just to play Blue Mercus. At least that sounds right. I guess there's like, I mean, I only bounced a Belix, so I don't ever think that I would Locomotive or Belix here. What was I thinking about? Oh, I get confused here. Okay, so you can read the chat. I was like, I tap my mana for Hulkus, and then I forget what I start tapping for another play, and I change my mind mid-play, and I forget which mana I tapped. So I tapped Hulkus, Vapor, Terror Pit, and then I was trying to retap to make sure I had retapped Hulkus, Vapor, Terror Pit. You can read in the chat logs that I was trying to actually find which ones I had tapped. I wonder what I was overthinking, because like looking back on this, I think it's a pretty clear bloom. I think this is a pretty clear bloom. But because I started tapping and then I untapped, now I think I might have been going for Belix Loco. I don't like Belix Loco. I really don't. It chump blocks, but it doesn't really get me anywhere. If I had a Beast Folk, like Sky Sword in hand, well, then I would be playing Sky Sword, right? So, yeah, I really don't see a reason why I wouldn't play Bloom here. I think it's always Bloom. Wow, I'm really thinking about this. Yeah, and then I think Drapty thought for a second I was redoing something, but I was just trying to tap the original 3. Now you get to watch me type in 1.5 times speed because I refuse to edit this out because it's too much work. Yeah, then we just start chatting, and I'm just gonna have to narrate through the chatting because I'm not editing this. It's not happening. Anyway, yeah, I think it's Bloom. If I don't play Bloom, I'm gonna be mildly upset here. Bloom is very weak to like another Surfer or a Unicorn Fish draw, Spiral Gate or something. But there aren't too many things that would punish me for this. Yeah, it's got to be the Bloom. And I trade with Surfers. Ailzonius does the Octagon thing where it just separates. Very fun. So yeah, I gotta answer the Belix next turn. That's no problem. We've got a couple ways to do that. I think Drapty's just replaying it. Yep. And again, the Ailzonius should be on top of the Belix. I think he's going to correct that in a second. At least I think. How y'all doing? Y'all enjoying the series? Yeah, I really need to do more live commentary. I just a spoiler for IDC33. We've already started. I did narrate live while I was playing for round 1, so that may or may not be relevant to you, depending on your preference for content consumption. But for me, it saves me a ton of time because I don't like posting things where like there's just no depth. You know, I want to be talking through stuff either live or afterwards. I don't really care either way. Both have their pros and cons, but I'm not going to post something that just doesn't have anything. So in cases like this where I didn't narrate live, I feel like the compulsive need to narrate over it afterwards, and it takes a lot of time. So yeah, does not attack because Belix is very fragile. I have a lot of ways to potentially answer it, and just passes the turn to me. And this hand is a lot. I have a lot of different options. Drapty does have 1 card in hand. We don't have a lot of intel. We know that Drapty had 3 mana untapped when he replayed Belix, so this could be Surfer, it could be a Petrova, it could be another Ailzonius. We just don't know. So I've got to decide how worth it is to use Locomotiver here on it. Locomotiver and Belix are fine to stall. I don't have any Sky Swords around, so Swap can't just build my shields, unfortunately. That would be pretty nice, I think. And of course, if we want to start turning up the heat, we do have the Aqua Sniper, which we can play for cheap too. We can do some really fun soul swap shenanigans here. We can like, let's see, how much mana do I have? 9 right now. So there is like Locomotive or soul swap Belix, all in 1 turn to discard the last card, set up a chump blocker for the Ailzonius, and also swap something out, probably the Locomotive for the Aqua Sniper. But I didn't play mana yet, so maybe I'm doing something else. Interesting. I'm very curious. Is this a foul Ega play? Strange. Foul to get back Terror Pit. So I guess I wanted to wait 1 more turn before getting aggressive. What did I discard with a Locomotiver? A Kalan? No. I discarded Holy Awe. Okay, that's a pretty good discard. And Drapty draws Emerald, which is arguably the worst card in the deck to draw here. Yeah, did I not play mana last turn? I did not. I kind of liked Locomotiver's Soul Swap Belix. I don't know if there's a reason why I couldn't do it. Maybe I just didn't want to only break 4 shields here, and I think maybe lose to an Aqua Surfer, but I'd be bouncing the Belix and Hulkus. I'm not at risk of losing. Replaying either of those, especially the Belix, is like very easy for him, so I guess it wasn't like the most consistent thing ever. There's got to be something sick here, though. Let's see what sounds the best weeks later. I can go up to 9. If I put the Sniper down, I can Soul Swap it and Plague. If only Ailzonius could be targeted, that'd be a full clear. That'd be so cool. That would just be awesome. Can't do that. I can target the rest of the things. So honestly, that sounds great to me. I think, you know, I would just be jamming it. I'd be putting Aqua Sniper in mana. I would Soul Swap out the Locomotiver for the Sniper, bouncing like the blue cards or something, and then I would Miraculous Plague just Belix and like the blue mana, make my opponent go back to 5 next turn, and then I would break 4 shields, and I'd still have a Belix on board to chump block the Ailzonius. I think that is the way to do this, but apparently I disagree. I charge Terra Pit and mana. I Soul Swap. What am I doing? I Soul Swap out Locomotiver for Surfer. Okay, this is the same play. But it's worse. It's the same play, except Surfer could be Sniper. Oh wait, it's not worse. It's not. Yeah, no, this is the better way to do it. I was right in the past, because okay, so like if you're thinking just like one-dimensionally about it, you think, oh, the other play is better because I'd have a 5,000 power instead of a 2,000 power. But A, the power doesn't matter. And Sniper's ability to bounce 2 things hadn't mattered this turn, but it could matter next turn, right? So I go in, I break the 4 shields, and I save the more powerful effect for bouncing 2 blockers just in case. For some reason, just now talking about it, I totally didn't think that my opponent playing 2 blockers next turn was a real possibility, but even with only 5 mana next turn, Drapty could definitely play 2 Belix. Oh yeah, and I was just trying to make sure he revealed what the Bloom shields were. I still want to see them, even if they weren't shield triggers spells that I could play. And we will see what they were in a second. Sirion and Magris, 2 cards that aren't really impacting anything right now. And then Hulkus is going in. Surfer is going in. And yeah, this is the situation where Ailzonius itself is very powerful, but the deck has no other creatures on board, so it's just getting raced by a few guys and a Belix, basically. It's all coming together. Yeah, in this case, I feel like it's pretty much 100% lost for Drapty. I mean, he can play a couple blockers, or he could play a few attackers and just hope for Holy All last shield. But either way, the Sniper does let me answer any 2 creatures, which is the max that he can afford to play with 5 mana, so I'm never at risk of him setting up lethal or defending enough to potentially survive. In this case, he played enough to where one defensive shield trigger would allow him to stay alive. But because I have the double Belix, or because I have the Aqua Sniper for the double Belix, I'm more than fine here. And actually, because I have the Sniper, I probably shouldn't have blocked that, just in case he gets aggressive eventually, because I'll always have enough creatures to where Holy All would be the only out. But either way, actually, Holy All's not an out. What am I talking about? It's Blue Mercus. So yeah, we're absolutely 100% gonna win this turn. So I'm totally fine to block with Belix or not, because the only out is negated by Blue. So yeah, as usual, I was smarter in the moment than currently, but had lethal there, guaranteed. And that is a 2-1 over Drapty's Lightwater Ailzonius. GG's. And that was round 5, so 4-1 now after that round in IDC33. One more round of Swiss to go. As mentioned, a 5-1 would lock top 8 and a 4-2 may or may not, depending on tiebreakers. And I think at this point I realized my tiebreakers weren't doing based on how the tiebreaker system works in the IDC circuit currently, they weren't doing too well. So a lot riding on this last round, and I'll be continuing to post daily. So the next round, round 6, the final round of Swiss, is coming up tomorrow. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.